right. Good morning, everybody.
Morning.
Hope everyone had a good Christmas and looking forward to New Year's. For anybody who doesn't know, I'm Mark. I'm the youth pastor here at New Day. I'll just say it's so great working with the youth we have here. They are one wonderful group of kids. They are definitely some of the most kind and thoughtful kids that I've gotten to work with too in my time working with youth. So I'm very grateful for them. So hi youth. Good to see you over there. But yeah, our whole thing for youth group this year has been a study where I have asked the students to submit questions about what they might be interested in talking about over the year. Questions maybe about why we do something as a church, why something might be important, why we believe certain things, whatever comes to mind too. It could be a whole bunch of different things. So our students have been submitting questions. I got a whole pack of note cards right here. It's pretty thick. This is all for the year thus far, and I'm sure there'll be more as we go through. I have plenty of questions to keep going. This has been plenty of content for the year to go through. So that's been nice. But the reason why we've been having them submit questions is, one, I want that to be relevant to what they care about. I want topics that they're interested in, topics that they are wondering about, things that are on their mind. And then our youth group's name, P3, which stands for Prepare, Prioritize, and Perspective. And the questions, I think, will serve a purpose in doing that as well. Because, I mean, these are questions that they're asking. How do they do something in their life? It's preparing them to act in their lives and do whatever comes up for them, to prioritize God first in their life, and instead of prioritizing other things that might be competing for their attention. And then to have the right perspective on situations and remember the hope we have through Jesus. And we can get those easily knocked off course by many different things. So the whole point of asking all these questions is to keep us on track. Maybe you're like me. I grew up as a person who asked a lot of questions and had a lot of curiosities about why things are a certain way. I don't usually like taking things just at face value. I like to know deeper kind of why things are the way they are. And this can go good and bad because sometimes you question things that people don't like you questioning. It could come up with rules at school and why they have certain expectations for your classes, or house rules. Maybe there's a rule that your parents put in place and you're like, I don't like that very much. Not a big fan of that. I know there were a lot of times when I wanted to use the car and then I had rules about what I could do with the car and when I could do things with the car. And that got frustrating when I wanted to go drive to another town. And my parents were like, no, you're too young to drive to other towns right now. Frustrations. It turns into rules at work that might be frustrating. Maybe some of you have experience where there's a rule at work and you're like, I'm really annoyed that this is how things have to be. Dress codes are one thing that I think some people can get pretty frustrated with. I've been on sports teams, and there's certain expectations and rules that happen when you're part of a sports team. Like one of your teammates is late, and everybody runs for it. Okay. And there could be so many different things that are set up a certain way, and we might have questions about why it's that way, what's important about it, why is it the way it is. Bedtimes, times you have to wake up, chore schedules, why punishments are a certain way. There can be so many different things. As I was thinking through this, there was definitely an example that came up back from my days in high school that was kind of a bit of a wake-up call for me. I was homeschooled, and then I went into public school, and there was a math class I got put into, and it was just the basic math class, and my dad was very good at math, and he taught me about math, and I enjoyed math, and I was pretty good at math. So I got put in this class, and I knew basically everything that they were talking about. I knew what's going on. I had no issues with the class, and Got A's on all the tests, A's on all the homework. It was going great. And then middle of the semester comes along, and I look at my grade, and I have a D. I'm like, why do I have a D in this class? It doesn't make any sense. I pass everything. And then I ask the teacher, come to find out, there is an expectation for the grades that you are to take notes, and you will be graded on your notes for the class as well. I didn't take notes. I took no notes all year because I knew everything. Why do I need to take notes? And I was very upset. It blew up into this whole thing. And ultimately, the teacher won because it's the teacher's classroom. They get to set the rules. They get to set the expectations. And I had to take notes for the rest of the semester. Sometimes that's how it is. But the teacher had a reason for why that rule was in place. They know that if you ever do need to go back, you'll have something to go back to look at. It's a way to make sure that you understand what's going on and you aren't cheating on your test. Maybe I was cheating the whole time getting my A's. There's reasons for why you would have the notes, and in the moment you get a little heated, but looking back at it, you kind of understand, okay, I understand the purpose for this expectation. But our youth have been asking a bunch of questions, as mentioned, and just some examples of the questions that they've been asking over the year that we've gone over so far have been, how do we get the Bible? How do we get the Bible that we have, and is it trustworthy? Can we trust what is in there? How do we know if God is telling us something? How to figure out our gifts or our spiritual gifts? How to have self-control when there's temptations? Is the God of the Old Testament the same as the God of the New Testament? What are the difference with all these denominations? You just drive around town, you see a whole bunch of different denominations. What's up with that? That led into talking about the Church of Jesus Christ of Latter-day Saints, or Mormons. It led to a whole week discussing who they are. We talked about how to handle anxiety, how to be patient, how to handle perfectionism. Maybe these are some questions that even you might ask yourselves. I know there are questions that I asked. They're great questions. These are some really thoughtful questions that they've been asking. And it's been great to get into them and discuss them as a group and go over some perspectives. And we've had a lot of positive responses from the students in our discussions. But I think one thing that is important is it okay to ask questions? Because I think some people kind of feel like they're walking kind of carefully when it comes to asking questions. Because some might see it as irreverent or really disrespectful to ask questions about God. Almost like you're in a museum and it's like all these beautiful things, but you can't touch them because they're precious and you can't mess up, can't get your fingerprints on it. Just leave them alone and just look at them and respect them as they are. Or maybe it is something that you're nervous to ask questions because it might impact your life, or you might realize something you don't want to know, the whole ignorance is bliss situation. Maybe it means you have to make a change in your life if you know the answer to something. Or maybe it's you feel like all of Christianity is too fragile, and if you poke at it too many times, it's all going to just come crumbling down. It could open the door to doubts or other worries that you might have. So questions could be something that either, yeah, questions are great, or questions can be something that maybe you're like, no, we shouldn't ask questions at all. In studying for this, there was some questions of the Bible that I was looking at and just kind of getting an idea for what's in there. And there's a lot of questions in the Bible. If you go through, there's a lot of people asking questions. Just a few examples, some related to what we talked about recently with Christmas and the birth of Jesus. Mary asks questions about how she's going to have a kid as a virgin. And an angel talks to her and explains kind of the situation. Kind of similar, Zechariah is like, how am I going to have a kid? And because of how he asked the question, he's not able to talk for a while. There is a lot of examples of the disciples going to Jesus and asking questions of him, and him explaining a lot of times what he's been talking about to them. You also have the Pharisees who come up to Jesus and demand an answer from him about so many different things, and they walk away embarrassed and being rebuked by Jesus because of their attitudes towards him. You've got to go back to Genesis, where the serpent comes to Eve and is like, hey, did God really say that? As a temptation resulting in a curse. If you read through the book of Psalms, there are so many questions as you go through the book of Psalms that are all in these different songs that they wrote. Questions are everywhere. And there's a lot of different responses to those questions that you'll see. So should we be asking questions? Should we be thinking about these things? I think yes. As I was going through, I found a great verse that I really enjoyed. It's the book of Proverbs, one of my favorite books of the Bible. So many good things that you can pull out of there. Proverbs 25:2. It is God's privilege to conceal things and the king's privilege to discover them. And this just really stood out to me because it sort of made me think about like a scavenger hunt somebody might set up for somebody. Or as part of youth group, we do these games where we've made puzzles where kids have to solve them each week to solve a greater puzzle, almost like an escape room type situation. And as the person who constructs those, it's very fun to watch the kids work on them and sometimes really struggle with them and sometimes get them immediately. And it's a great time to watch that happen where you have the answer and they need to figure it out and just kind of let them go and do their thing. Kind of reminds me of that, where it's God's privilege to conceal things, king's privilege to discover them. I think God provides us with opportunities to ask questions, to go deeper, to look for answers, to seek things. And I like puzzles. I don't know about you guys too. Anybody here like puzzles? Got a few people who like puzzles. I like puzzles. Funny, over Christmas break at Rachel's work, they had puzzles they would lay out, and I completed 3 of them there over the few days I was off. They kept putting new ones out for me. I like doing puzzles, getting all the pieces together and putting it all together. So I think, though, that verse is saying God conceals things, and it's man's ability to discover them. So questions are good, but I think the important thing is how we ask the questions. What's our attitude behind the questions? And I think that's what we see through the many examples is some people come with one attitude, other people come with a different attitude. They have different responses to their questions. So a few points that I want to draw out from this that are kind of our attitudes we should have with asking questions. I think number 1 is asking with humility. Being humble with our questions. Like asking as subjects of a king going before him. Or as redeemed sinners before a holy God. We see the examples of the prideful going before and asking Jesus these questions, accusatory questions, and just trying to force him to do what they want him to do. And I mean, they leave embarrassed, they leave rebuked, they leave with their tail between their legs. We need to realize our position compared to who God is and how he is king, he is creator, he is savior, he is above us. It's not for us to try and make God be what we want him to be. And I think it's important for us to understand we may not always understand everything. We might not always understand why things are, or might not be given an answer. But the question is, what's our response to that? If we don't get the answer we want, are we still going to do our best to follow God, or are we going to start rebelling and go our own way and do what we want to do? Humility is, I think, very challenging to do in life too. I know humility is one of those things that I struggle with a lot. I feel like myself getting all prideful and thinking I'm so great and awesome. But to come to God with questions with that humble attitude and saying, I don't know everything. I don't need to know everything, but I want to seek this out to learn more about you, God. I want to discover the answer. I want to discover what's going on. And if I don't get the answer I want, if I don't get an answer from God, being okay with that. And understanding it's not about having all the answers, but it's about knowing who God is more. It leads me into the second point, which is asking questions with patience. A lot of times answers are not going to be those immediate things where, oh, I got a question, immediate answer. And sometimes getting answers will require some effort. That does remind me sometimes of our youth group games where there's a thing put in front of them and they want it to be done immediately, and then they get frustrated if they don't get it right away. We've had some of those games that we've played where it takes weeks for them to solve certain puzzles, and it's funny to watch the frustration kind of build each week, but there's still that like motivation to keep going that they'll have. You need to have patience a lot of times to solve puzzles, answer questions, to get to the end of what you need. It sort of reminds me of learning a job as well. When I first started a job, you come in knowing absolutely nothing. You come in kind of looking around like, this is all new. I don't understand what's going on. You got that person who's training you, comes alongside you, starts showing you some of the basics, and they, a lot of times, it could change at different places, but they'll show you kind of what you do, give you examples of the whole situation. Then they'll have you start doing it yourself, and they'll be beside you, making sure you're doing it right, not screwing up everything. And then eventually, as you get more confidence, you kind of get more and more as you go, where you are doing it more independently. And then eventually by yourself. And you are able to function with maybe some questions here and there of things that pop up. And then you get those questions answered, and eventually you don't need help anymore. And you're doing it on your own. And at that point, you could become the trainer, where you are the person who is now training the next person and giving them the examples of how to do it, and just repeating that process. I think this is how our walks with God and asking these questions can go a lot of times. Is sometimes you might feel that brand new person where you don't know what you're doing. It's all new to you, and you got to be shown everything. And then you have those where you're starting to get some idea of some basics of how to practice those. And as we progress, we begin to learn more and more, but I mean, it could take some time. As somebody who's trained people at work, sometimes it takes a long time for people to finally feel like they can do it on their own. And there's the constant calls of, Mark, I need help. And it's okay, I'm here to help. It's okay. But to learn those things requires patience. To progress and gain knowledge requires patience. It's not going to be instant. You're not going to be an expert at the start. And when we ask questions, we need patience to kind of let ourselves grow, to let ourselves learn things. Practicing how to study questions is a big part of that too. I mean, Somebody who doesn't know how to look for answers is going to struggle. But somebody who can be shown how to look for answers, maybe can start learning those tricks and then progress themselves later to look themselves for answers to the questions. And we need to be patient, not quit on it, not say, oh, I don't know how to do this, I'm done, I'm just going to stop. Patience in seeking those answers is an important part of it. And I think we need to have this humility and patience and keep asking questions, because these questions can take us deeper in our walk with God. Asking questions has been a big step in what has helped me grow deeper with my walk with God. Because it can open our eyes to bigger things that are out there. It can broaden the horizon, see the bigger picture as we go. There's been a lot of times in life where it's like, okay, I think I got this. I think I understand Christianity. And then I read something else. I'm like, okay, I don't understand Christianity like nearly as deep as I can. There's so much more. And then you keep going, just more and more and more as you go that you can learn. It is a lifelong study. There's always more to learn. And God wants us to interact with His Word and learn about it. I mean, that's why we have the Bible, is to get into it, to learn about it, to learn about who God is. And one of the practices I have as I go through my Bible, and this is why I like a physical Bible, is as I'm going through, I put little question marks and little side margins next to verses that I'm like, what's this about? There's a lot of question marks. I think I've showed the youth some of them at youth groups. I've pointed out the question marks. But as I'm going, if I'm reading something, it's like, okay, what does that mean? Question mark right in the Bible. And that's something that I can look into as I keep going back, is maybe read some commentaries or look up other sermons that pastors have done about that. Read some books about it. There's plenty of resources that are out there to start digging into this. And I mean, when you're looking for answers, there's always going to be people who will present ideas and you'll read it and be like, I don't think that's right. There's, as someone who's read many different commentaries and different things, there's some interpretations that some people have. It's like, where did you get this from? Are you just trying to come up with a brand new idea that no one's ever heard of before? And it's always good to read people's writings with a critical eye at times. But as you look through these, though, you'll kind of maybe see, okay, these group of people gave this argument about why something's a certain way, and they back it up with this evidence from other verses, and you kind of start to put the pieces together, and you can get a bigger picture of the answer. And it can help you trust God more, see who He is more. And I believe that truth will withstand questioning too. If something is true, it's not going to be that fragile thing that's going to crumble if you start poking at it. If we believe that the Bible is true and what it says is true, it should be able to withstand questions. It won't fall apart if we start asking some questions. These questions have helped me deepen my walk with God, because I like to picture what's going on in the moment. As I read through it, I picture the scene in my head sometimes. I think what's going through their minds. I'll ask my questions about the characters. What are they thinking about? What are they seeing? What's going on around them? What might this reference back to in their heads? What could they have heard that this could relate to in their life? I know there's a lot of times in the Bible too that they start talking about practices that I have no experience with. Like, I've never been a farmer. I don't know a lot of the farming analogies. So maybe it leads me to questions about what does it mean to like plant seeds, and how does that work? There's so many times that reading something will lead me to a deeper question, to have a deeper understanding of the situation. How does what I'm reading maybe apply to the history of Israel and what they've talked about? You can do word studies where you look at words that are in the verses you're reading there, and you can see how there's the same word used in other places and how it could connect maybe to an Old Testament passage that's going on. There's so many connections and greater context that you can get into as you dig into questions. And I think each of these have helped me deepen my walk with God by asking questions over and over and over and discovering answers that can piece this all together. So this is why I have the kids submit their questions. I want them to know questions are okay. Ask your questions. They're great questions. I've asked many of these questions. Don't be embarrassed about having questions. It's a good thing. Questions are important. Questions are going to help you to go deeper in your walk with God. And I think, though, the important thing to remember is our attitudes that we have with our questions is, are we being humble? Are we being patient when we're doing these? Is it motivated by deepening our walk with God? Or is it, I want to be a know-it-all? It's meant to have us go deeper with God. So we're going to give you a moment to sit at your table and reflect on maybe something that God might be teaching you today. And maybe it's a question that you want to ask him, or multiple questions. Maybe it's an attitude that we need to change. So go ahead and take a moment to reflect and see if there's anything that God is teaching you today. So we're going to take a moment here in the room where you can talk at your tables about maybe something that you feel like God has taught you. And a lot of times we use an I will statement where we say, I will do whatever, fill in the blank, that you feel like God is leading you to do this week or in future weeks. But yeah, maybe it's even just thinking about why you aren't asking questions or the attitude you have behind your questions. And I'm just going to hope that each of us will remember we can keep asking questions because God wants us to, but ask with humility and patience as we deepen our walk with God. So if you're at home, you can go ahead and maybe find somebody to share this with. If you have people with you, you can share it with them, or somebody can go share this week. Text them right now, whatever you want to do. And us in the room here, we will go ahead and have a moment where we can discuss as groups. So thanks for joining us.